Thank you for watching the Housing Oregon YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. Slide decks from the presenters are going to be available below. Thanks for watching.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Northeast Oregon Housing Summit. So we are so glad that you're all here, able to take the time to join us today. I want to say I'm impressed that folks have traveled from many miles to join us today. So I want to shout out to thank those who came from Ontario and John Day and Hermiston and Pendleton, Umatilla. And then we even have folks from the other side of the Cascade Range, a lot of folks from Salem with Oregon Housing Community Services and Housing and Urban Development. So I just want to appreciate everyone who's made the trek to join us here today in LaGrande. So I'm Bryan Hoop, Executive Director of Housing Oregon, the organization helped put on this event with some of our partners. For those who are not familiar with Housing Oregon, we are the mission-based, member-driven, nonprofit association of organizations and folks from across the state who are building and operating affordable housing across Oregon, including homeless service providers, multifamily rental housing organizations, and homeownership organizations. And we're working to strengthen the collective voice and capacity of the mission-driven organizations that have a commitment to housing justice across Oregon. Through our statewide network, we build the affordable housing sector by offering education, resource development, and advocacy efforts. And if you haven't already, you're welcome to join us. We have about 110 member organizations from across the state, and Christina, our membership director in the back there, would be happy to talk to you if your organization wants to join Housing Oregon. So logistics, before we introduce our opening speakers, there's a few logistics I wanted to go over. So if folks want to move up closer so there's space in back for latecomers, that would be great, but you're fine where you're at. Restrooms are off in the lobby. The women's restroom will be to your right, back into the lobby, and the men's room is to the left, down the hallway. I want to apologize. Unfortunately, there's no Wi-Fi service here, so we're going analog here, or you have to use up your data, so sorry about that. And just wanted to point out what's on the table. So the agenda, you should find copies on each table of the agenda for today, and instructions for reflection exercise using sticky notes I'll explain in a moment, and also oh, and then we also wanted to let you know after the event we will be sending out an email with links to all the presentations that will be shared up here and some other resources that some of our panelists and speakers have provided. And also, I think most of you I've seen a lot of people doing the bingo exercise. One of our goals for today is to encourage folks to be connecting, networking with others, to try and encourage people thinking about new ideas, new possibilities for increasing housing production in Northeast Oregon. So I encourage you during the breaks throughout the day, during lunchtime, to use that bingo card to meet new people, put your name on top of it. If you get 5 in a row, you can turn it in the back table, and we have a gift basket that we'll raffle off at the end of the day. So the reflective exercise that I mentioned, we want to thank Oregon Housing and Urban Development, the field office for HUD, for being one of the sponsors for today's event. They're helping provide an evaluation team that's joined us called Cloudburst Group that it's going to be documenting today's event. So to help capture your input and better inform what we collectively take away from today's event, you'll see sticky notes on each page or on each table. So we ask you to participate by sharing your ideas. If ideas come up that don't get answered, up on the front here for each session, there's chart packs on both sides. But there's questions, or if you have questions, you have additional information you need to hear, or you want to hear about after the session, or what are your next steps, or ideas you have for next steps, people you want to reach out to for a conversation on that issue, or lastly, what might be some big takeaways. We would love it if you share your notes. Just write them on the sticky, and after the session or at lunchtime, put them up on the chart pack sheets. So why are we here today? So Housing Oregon being a state, or the housing crisis is a statewide problem. We know that. And it's having profound impacts not just in urban areas, but in rural communities across Oregon. We're here today in LaGrande because we're a statewide organization, and many of our partners that we worked with to put on this event are statewide organizations, and we need to connect with folks in regions where they're at, with folks working on the ground to try and help solve the affordable housing and homelessness crisis. You're the ones who we want today to be sharing your ideas and best practices for new innovative ideas for helping increase housing production. In Housing Oregon, one of our main purposes is we're investing in peer learning groups, helping frontline workers navigate the vast world of the affordable housing industry. So, and we're deeply committed to supporting developers in the rural areas. And also we wanted to let, one of the benefits of being a member is we also have a rural policy council that the housing developers and with our member organizations across the state participate in helping drive membership identified issues and policies that they want to work on collectively. And we have 4 staff, so I want to recognize the staff for Housing Oregon. Kevin and Christina, can you stand up and just wave your hands? And Christina's in back. And then we especially want to give a shout out to Jennifer Bugley, who's also in back. If you can raise your hand, she is the organizer for this event. So please join me in saying thanks, Jennifer. And wrapping up my comments, I want to thank our sponsors for today. Thanks to the generous support from Oregon Housing and Community Services, the Oregon Field Office of Housing and Urban Development, the Ford Family Foundation, the Housing Production Partners that you want to stand up because you have some information back if you want to check them out. So there, she's in the back there. And then the Urban League of Portland has also been one of the sponsors or helped out with today's event. And partnerships that we've worked with, a planning committee that we've worked with. I want to shout out Sarah Parker with the Northeast Oregon Housing Authority. Do you want to stand up? She was on the planning committee. And Kristy Rodriguez with the Housing Authority of Malheur and Harney County. And Roger Condie, who's going to come up in a moment with the Umatilla County Housing Authority. There he is. And Kim Travis with Oregon Housing and Community Services. There she is. Stephanie Phillips with the Urban League of Portland. I'm not sure if she's here yet. There you are, Stephanie. Hi. And lastly, Kirsten Ray with the Oregon Field Office for HUD, who unfortunately is not here, but Bryan Guiney is here with the HUD office. So without further ado, I wanted to welcome one of our local leaders, Roger Condie with the Housing Authority of Umatilla County.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out, and we're excited to see you. It was once thought we wouldn't have this huge of a group, but we're glad to see that how many of you signed up to come out. I wanted to take a minute and just say in that planning group, I don't really like virtual meetings because I think when Bryan asked who would like to do the opening remarks, I was the last one to shut my camera off. I couldn't figure the button out, so anyways, I wanted to share just a quick experience with you before we go on to the next part of this. Is I've been in social work for over 20 years, and I wanted to share this experience when I was working at a community action partnership program in Ogden, Utah. In that time, I had a couple come in for a food basket. And they were talking to me about a situation in their life and how they lived on this one street. And as small as Ogden is, there was actually this one street that was not a great street to live on. And they wanted to have other options. And at that time, I was more limited in my information, understanding all of housing and what it can do and what's available. So I talked to them about opportunities that they could have that I knew of. And one was this lady, the wife, wanted to go to school. She wanted to do something. And so we looked at applying for Weber County or Weber State University, and we put her into, got her enrolled. And they actually we were able to look at the grants, the loans, things that could help them to adjust their living situation. And they were actually able to move from their home that they were in to a home closer to the university on a better street. And from there, she was actually able to obtain a job at the university. She majored in art, and the university was so impressed with her and what she was doing. So they actually worked with her to apply for grad school, to get funding for grad school, and then they talked to her about coming back to Weber State as a teacher, as a professor there in art. The concept is housing. Where they were living, they felt of a threat. They felt scared. They didn't enjoy where they were living, so they felt like they just had this small world to live in to just try to survive. But when options came available for them to have a different spot in a different community, then they were able to thrive. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is to try to help those in our communities be able to thrive, to be able to have opportunities for success, and to be able to thrive. We can do that easily by just working together. Not worried so much about the political parts of it, even though that plays a large part, but just thinking about the people in our community want a place to live. They need a place to live, and a lot of the times it's a place that will help them to thrive and help them to become a better employee for those who are employing them. And so I just want to thank you again for everybody who's here today and for your attendance and your willingness to have this discussion with us. We're excited for this event. So thank you again for everybody attending. I would like to first acknowledge those who are here and joining us. First off, we have Representative Pam Marsh. She has been selected to be the chair of the House and Committee of Housing, the chair of House Committee and Housing and Homelessness. That's a lot of housing in that. Pam, if you'll please stand up for us so everyone can see you. We'd like to thank you for making this journey out here, this travel. For some of you, know it's a long drive from Portland over to here. So we thank you. We'd like to also say thank you to all the other elected officials. First, we'd like to welcome all the county commissioners. If those who are here could stand up so we could see you and give you thanks for the work you're doing. And then really out here in these rural areas, we need the help from our city, from the many different cities. If there's any city officials that are here elected that would like to stand up and just wave and say, so we can say thank you to you for the work you're doing. Thank you again. I appreciate it. So we're going to move on to our first presenter, Paul Anderes. Did I say it right? My nerves would have gotten me. Paul is a commissioner with the Union County, and we're going to welcome him up to share a few thoughts about programs in his area. Thank you.
Good morning. Oh, there we go. Okay. I am Paul Anderes, Union County Commissioner. I would like to recognize my co-commissioners. Back of the room is Commissioner Matt Scarfo, and I haven't seen her yet this morning, but Commissioner Donna Babridge. Along with being Union County Commissioner, I also co-chair Association of Oregon Counties Transportation and Community Development Subcommittee. I'm chair of Eastern Oregon Counties Association, and I also serve on the Northeast Oregon Housing Authority. So I have a lot of different avenues into housing, and I'm really excited to be here this morning, and I want to welcome you to Northeast Oregon. And I know where Eastern Oregon is, and for those of you that may not know, there is an Oregon Revised Statute 321.700 that defines what Eastern Oregon is, and that is that portion of the state of Oregon lying east of a line beginning at the intersection of northern boundary of the state and western boundary of Wasco County, thence southerly along the western boundaries of the counties of Wasco, Jefferson, Deschutes, Klamath, to the southern boundary of the state. People have a lot of different definitions. My wife and I wouldn't call it argue, but debate on where Eastern Oregon is and where it starts and where it ends. And I couldn't find one for Northeast Oregon, so I really want to extend my most sincere welcome to Eastern Oregon. Every meeting that I go to, and in my job, I go to a lot of meetings and a lot of different topics, to a meeting. Every single one of them, at some point in the meeting, there are three things that come up. One, it's very difficult to hire anybody currently. Two, if you are able to hire them, there is nowhere for them to buy, build, or rent. And if by some miracle you get those first two boxes checked off, there's no childcare available. So I'm very pleased that we're taking some serious efforts in the housing arena, because I think that is one of the linchpins, although all three of them are so interconnected. But like I say, I'm pleased that we're working on housing so diligently. Also proud of the work that Northeast Oregon Housing Authority has done to address affordable housing under the leadership of Sarah Parker. The Northeast Oregon Housing Authority staff was able to complete Timber Ridge. The staff recognized the need for this type of housing and delivered, and many of you know how very difficult it is to deliver a project of this size and complexity. Timber Ridge serves to provide the much needed affordable housing to the residents of Union County and the city of LaGrande. This project aims to foster interaction in neighborliness and intergenerational community and extend housing access to seniors and individuals with mobility and physical disabilities through fully accessible units. Timber Ridge is located in LaGrande. This community has 82 units of affordable housing with 8 walk-up buildings for households earning 30 to 60% of the area median income. Timber Ridge has been intentionally designed as an intergenerational community with special attention to trauma-informed and universal design principles, with the ultimate goal of extending housing access to seniors and individuals with disabilities. Timber Ridge is also highly sustainable, targeting Earth Advantage Platinum certification and Net Zero certification. The project includes a large photovoltaic array, solar array, that is projected to exceed the electrical demand for the project by 10%. And I hope that you take the opportunity this afternoon as we wrap things up here to go to Timber Ridge. And again, I welcome you to Union County and LaGrande. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for that. Greatly appreciated. Our next person would be Cindy Timmons. Now, just to let you know, I'm Cindy Timmons' favorite. We're currently working executive director of Umatilla County Housing Authority. Her and I have had a lot of great dealings with each other. So I'm going to turn the time over to her. Thank you.
I usually start our conversations with, now Roger. So, how wonderful you are, that's right. Good morning, my name is Cindy Timmons. I'm Umatilla County Commissioner. I was given 3 minutes to speak, And the problem is, I didn't know what I was going to talk about. Nobody told me. So I have 2 points I want to make. One is on affordable housing. The other one is on homelessness. So I'm going to take 4 minutes because these are important points I really want everybody to know about. Yesterday, I was honored. Well, actually, I'm honored to sit on Representative Marsh's Governor's Homeless Committee. And we just had our first meeting not too long ago. There were a lot of you that are in this room that were there in Salem with me. We took a tour yesterday to give Representative Marsh just a glimpse of Umatilla County. Also on that tour was Representative Levy. She's here today. Bobby, you want to stand up? And Bobby does a lot for our area. Anyway, Bobby was there. Our new incoming Senator, Todd Nash, was there. My partner, Dan Doran, was there, and our Economic Development Director, Bob Walder. And we saw a lot yesterday in a very short period of time. One of the things that keeps coming up in my conversations is subcontractors, the lack of them. And I know a little something about that. My husband and I owned a glass shop in Milton Freewater. We've owned it about 40 years. And he is a journeyman glazer, very proud of that. And when he got that certification in the early 1980s, the unions left this area. And so he bought his dad's glass business, and we've owned it all those years. What happened was Milton Freewater, they built a school, probably close to 10 years ago, and my husband couldn't even look at it because he did not have the workforce. So he picked up the phone, called the union in Portland. It changed our world, and that's been about 10 years ago. Today, we work with skilled labor. We're the only union glass shop on this side of the Cascades in both Oregon and Washington. And we are beyond busy. Anyway, we're talking about subcontractors, and there are some developers in this room who I have visited with, and they've decided to grow their own. Enough is enough. And so they're working with our local community college to build that skill set that's so desperately needed. Because I can't talk about Union County or Wallowa County, but I know that in Umatilla County, we have housing projects that are going in 1,000 homes, 500 homes, 800 homes. And we need that skilled workforce in order to get the job done. And I am so pleased to be a part of that movement of getting something done. And so I see the people that I'm talking about, and they're back there smiling from ear to ear. But I'm very pleased at the fact that something's getting done. What motivates me? Last week we had Umatilla County Fair, and I was asked to go visit a special family. And so I left the fair and went to visit this special family, and they lived, I'm going to say they lived on the other side of the tracks. Anyway, I was given a little bit of a heads up, but not much. I was taken to a old RV. It was a gooseneck. They had 6 children under the age of 8. There were 5 children and a baby. They lived in 200 square feet of living space. Got 2 minutes. I'm going to have to talk faster. Anyway, they lived in 200 square feet of living space. They've been there for 2 years. They were absolutely thrilled because they were getting to move. In fact, they moved, I think, the beginning of this week into a house. And it's taken them that long to put all the pieces together in order to put them into housing. The house was cleaned. The kids were tidy. The mother was lovely. The kids were thrilled. But if it was hard to go to bed that night and not think about those children in that very, very small area. And they were thrilled to be there because before they were homeless and living under a tree down on the path by the river. So that's what motivates me, is to get housing for our homeless community and to put people in housing that are working hard but just can't afford it. And so I'm thrilled to be part of CAPCO. They had a huge part in this family's move, and that's just one example of many that I've seen. But thank you for everything that you do, each and every one of you, to help solve this crisis. And I hope in my capacity that I can continue to work to see change. So thank you.
All right. Thank you again, Cindy and Paul. Appreciate your words that you're able to share with us. Like I said earlier, when we first started planning this, we were going to do this at the property over with at Sarah Parker's at Timber Ridge, but then it quickly grew. We are at over 200 people who have RSVP'd for this event, and we'd like to just acknowledge for those who showed up, for many to discuss the solutions for housing challenges in this area. There are architects, general contractors, developers, educators, nonprofit service providers, and so many others representing such a wide range of professions. So again, we thank you all for joining us. We will now turn the time over to Kristy Rodriguez, who will start our first, who will moderate our first session. Thank you.
Red means on. Yes, red means okay. So if you want to hit that button right there. There it is. Red just stay on, so just leave that on. Red means you're good. There we go. Hit that button right there. All right, you're all on.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kristy Rodriguez, and I'm the Executive Director of the Housing Authority of Malheur in Harney County. Like Roger stated, I am beyond appreciative to see folks show up to this summit today. It means a lot to us over here in Eastern Oregon to finally feel the presence of having people join us today for this very important conversation that needs to be had. We're starting off by exploring the lay of the land and with some history, some data, and some context within the broader state and federal policy landscape that will help us understand the current status of affordable housing needs and homelessness in Northeast Oregon communities. Hopefully, we can all agree there is a need for affordable housing and access to supportive services for achieving housing stability in all communities across the state of Oregon. What does the data say about meeting these needs in Northeast Oregon communities? Who is being housed in regulated affordable housing? What does homelessness and supportive housing services look like? What are current state and federal public policies, programs, and resources addressing these issues? Well, the best way to find that out is to have this great panel of folks that are going to be able to answer all of those questions. So I'm going to let each panelist go ahead and introduce themselves, and then we will get this panel started. So Bryan?
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Bryan Guiney. I'm your Oregon Field Office Director for the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. Thanks for welcoming us into your community today.
Good morning, everybody. Matthew Schaubold. I'm the Governor's Housing and Homelessness Initiative Director. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Tanisha Rosas. I work for Oregon Housing and Community Services. I'm one of their Legislative and Government Relations Coordinator. Thank you so much for having me.
Good morning, I'm Brooke Matthews. I am the Program Manager for the Rural Oregon Continuum of Care, which is the balance of state that represents 26 rural counties in Oregon.
So first up, it's going to be Bryan Guiney. Bryan is going to provide some historical background on how we got to where we're at with the challenges we face with affordable housing and homelessness.
All right. Thank you, Kristy. Okay, so wanted to kick us off with a perspective from the federal level of how we got into this housing crisis. You all know we're in a housing crisis. That's why you're all here today. It's actually we're in the middle of Oregon's third housing crisis by the numbers. The first was in the lead up to World War I, when there was a whole bunch of new folks moving into the state for the manufacturing base for the wartime industries. The second happened between World War I and the New Deal, and all of the shipbuilding activities, again, to support World War II along the Columbia and Willamette River. And now we are deep within Oregon's third housing crisis. So why and how did your federal government get involved in housing? So we're involved in housing production and preservation simply because the private market across the nation, left unassisted, has failed to deliver a sufficient quantity of homes, especially for our most vulnerable. And the rapid growth in Oregon's population, especially just in the last decade, we've added a 6th congressional seat, has been extremely cruel to seniors on fixed incomes, homeless youth, and young families right at the edge of poverty, which is Oregon's fastest growing homeless population. So again, I already introduced myself, Bryan Guiney. HUD is a cabinet-level agency responsible for national policy and programs to address America's housing needs, to improve and develop the nation's communities, and to enforce fair housing laws. And we have some of our fair housing partners in the room with us today. So what that looks like in Oregon, we provide mortgage insurance, credit enhancements, loans for first-time home buyers, and kind of at the other end of the spectrum for the developers of multifamily affordable housing units. We provide rental assistance. We contract with the 3 housing authorities represented here and the other 19 housing authorities across the state for rent assistance, and we contract with private owners of multifamily properties for rent assistance as well. We administer grants, congressionally directed spending. We administer the Continuum of Care program across the state, which you'll hear more about on this panel, and we have 49 HUD staff that are based here right in Oregon. So I spent the first half of my professional career in the Marine Corps, and I was an enlisted combat engineer, and then I spent most of my career as an infantry officer, actually in the same battalion as Pendleton Mayor John Turner, who I don't think is here, many years different, but we're in the same unit. But 2005, I spent a lot of time in Al Anbar province, Iraq, building homes and barracks, things that we would now think of as tiny homes for the Iraqi army. And we would roll into an area and we would be able to survey and commission and start building these homes within a matter of weeks. And so I was absolutely astonished when I returned home here to work on economic development and housing at just how long and how expensive and how much paperwork and how many different partners are required just to build one unit of custom housing. And projects like Timber Ridge, which we talked about, every one of these projects across the state is essentially a giant custom home. So the other thing is the disconnect between how we fund the basic services for our most vulnerable populations like food stamps, unemployment, health insurance, public education, but something is essential to all of that that's at the center of that, like housing, you're basically on your own. So if you're at a certain income level or a life situation here in Oregon, you're going to automatically qualify for food assistance. But in Oregon, if you qualify for housing, we, in Congress, fund only 1 voucher for every 7 families that would be eligible. So that's kind of where we are right now. How we got started into this, we're going to go all the way back real quick to 1854. Oregon's territorial government directs and mandates counties to provide care for their most vulnerable populations. What this looks like is direct cash payments to widows, veterans, folks like that, but most counties in Oregon create poor farms. That was what they were called. I don't think we'd use that term today, but this is a picture here of the Umatilla County Poor Farm, 4 acres just within the Pendleton city limits. There are 2 poor farms located right here in Union County. The first is down in the city of Union, right around where today is Beyond Organic Beef. And the second was just 3 miles to the east of us here at the intersection of Hunter and Fruit Lane Road. So 1935 was about the peak of poor farms here in Oregon. We're in the middle of the Great Depression. President Roosevelt's New Deal and the Social Security Act of 1935 brought a new federal funding structure. So within the Great Depression, the federal government starts to get into the home loan game. And so we're now a player, and we began a program to explicitly increase and segregate America's housing stock through policies known as redlining and refusing to insure mortgages in and near African American and Asian neighborhoods. African Americans and people of color were pushed instead into urban housing projects. And as we know, most middle income families in this country, they gain their wealth from the equity they have in their homes. And housing segregation and discrimination was rampant across the country, especially here in Oregon with race-based property exclusion laws. So all of this is going on across the country. To combat this, in 1968, HUD is created as an agency during Lyndon Johnson's administration through the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Fair Housing Act of 1965, and the Housing and Urban Development Act of 1968. So Congress mandates that the federal government will now start building 2.6 million homes per year. That was the target in 1968. We actually start cranking out about 600,000 homes. A couple months ago, I was able to go out to the west of here, to the city of Condie. There are still homes that HUD built that people are living in when we were the single funder and developer and builder of a project. And all you know this, there's 55 funders and 100 different funding sources and all these projects now. Imagine when a single agency could build, construct, and deploy homes in matters of months. So we start building homes at a massive rate in the 70s. And then the pendulum swings back in the other direction. Concentration of poverty, social unrest in public housing, in the projects, anti-black racism it triggered in politicians led Johnson's successor, President Nixon, to put a moratorium on new government-funded projects. So HUD would instead provide eligible applicants with vouchers to help pay for their housing. From 1980 to 1988, the administration cut HUD's budget by more than 50%. That's what it looks like. By 1983, a mere 10,000 units of housing are being produced from the 2.6 million that was budgeted just 15 years before. So fast forward to the present situation that we are now. The assumption that vouchers in the private market would meet the need for housing could not have been more wrong, and our systems have never fully recovered. The problem's structural. Our federal government is just not set up to address the housing crisis. Today we play a large, but a largely indirect role in the housing market. We operate through tax credits, incentives, guarantees, vouchers, and grants. Rather than building housing, we make mortgages cheaper, and we cover parts of market rent. It may come as a surprise to some of you here that the major funder of affordable housing across the country is something called the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, LIHTC. This was created by President Ronald Reagan's Tax Reform Act of 1986 as a way to bring private investment into affordable housing when the federal government wanted to disinvest. Over 90% of all affordable housing in the country has some form of LIHTC in it, which makes the IRS, not HUD or anybody else, the largest funder of affordable housing projects in the country. So there's something else that prevents us at the federal level from addressing this crisis at the scale and the urgency that it requires, and that's the 10th Amendment to the Constitution. So unlike my experience in Iraq, where we could come in and survey and commission and start building projects within a matter of weeks or months, land use policy is not the purview of the federal government. It's to the states. And state land use laws and Goal 10 and urban growth boundaries and 36 counties and 240 cities in the state, there's a huge variation in the political motivations, the capacity to carry out the work, and there's just not a way to create economies of scale to come in and address this crisis like we would some other national emergencies and like we do all the time overseas. So the confluence of high home prices, low or no vacancy, population growth, persistent, ever-growing wildfires, a pandemic, and places where it's difficult and quickly to build housing have all added to why we're here and the unsheltered homeless crisis which you experience in your communities every day. So all our following speakers are going to have much more detail on what that looks like and the rural Oregon continuum of care and the statistics here. But the good news is there's never been more federal funding. Well, there has been more federal funding for housing production in the last 3 years and probably in the last decade. About $27 billion alone just in the last 3 years. So you all, working with us, have cut veterans homelessness in half in the last 10 years. Your congressional delegation has fought extremely hard to bring more resources to Oregon as other states are unable to spend them or return those money to the Treasury. Your public housing authorities, community action agencies, state agencies, the governor's staff are fighting very hard to get these resources out of Portland and out of Salem and here on the street in rural communities. And just yesterday, HUD awarded Oregon Housing and Community Services and only 18 other state housing authorities, state housing agencies across the country, $8 million additional dollars to construct 153 units of housing, supportive housing with persons with disabilities. So your HUD field office, we're throwing everything at the kitchen sink, all of our staff along two main axes, addressing unsheltered homelessness and increasing housing production in the rural areas. It's personal for me. Both my mom and my dad were park rangers, so I grew up in the Eastern Sierra in a community just like this. And thanks for the time and inviting us to come in and present in your community today, and I'm looking forward to a really productive day.
Thank you so much, Bryan. Is this thing on? Yes. Sorry. Next up is Tanisha Rosas, who's going to summarize the role of the state's housing agency, Oregon Housing and Community Services, in helping coordinate our statewide approach to addressing our affordable housing and homelessness crisis. Tanisha.
Thank you. Again, Tanisha Rosas with Oregon Housing and Community Services. You can jump to the next slide. To begin, I'm going to introduce our agency to you. So OHCS is Oregon's housing finance agency. We are designated by the federal government to deploy housing development bonds and tax credits and key community development service programs. In addition, OHCS has a unique intentional focus beyond what a lot of housing finance agencies do in their states. We dive into homelessness services, energy services, and other services. This demonstrates our commitment to our state to meet the need of Oregonians by creating opportunities for alignment in services across the housing continuum. So in general, OHCS serves as a pass-through agency that takes federal and state resources and deploys them through our community partners to serve the needs of the community. Essentially, we're not boots on the ground, but we help fund boots on the ground. Next slide. So just historical context, in the past 4 biennia, OHCS has adapted radically to the needs of the state. So there are a lot of new programs every time I look. So I thank you for your patience, but also join in this journey with us as we grow and have more resources than we've ever had before. Next slide. So I'm gonna go over some of our main divisions at the state agency. So typically, OHCS has served Oregonians living at 80% or below of an area median income. Because of legislative changes and efforts of the governor's office, that has the programs we offer that can serve up to 128% AMI has increased. So that's been really exciting to watch. But in general, we have 3 major divisions at our agency. That's housing stabilization, affordable rental housing, and home ownership. What this does not show is a new division that has been stood up at OHCS in the aftermath of the 2020 wildfires, and that is our disaster recovery and resilience division. And then on top of all of this work, the core of our work is equity. Racial inequity has plagued our housing systems, as Bryan has summarized very, very eloquently. All of the different things that communities of color have faced in our state. OHCS is trying to mitigate a lot of that. Next slide. So I'm going to briefly go over each division. I'm going to try to go real fast. So in general, our affordable rental housing division provides financial resources to create and preserve quality affordable rental housing for Oregons of low and moderate income. And so we oversee also the long-term property performance and program compliance of those houses, and we support permanent supportive housing investments and HUD's rent-assisted portfolio of housing. I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So the Home Ownership Division seeks to engage and assist low to moderate income Oregonians to attain and sustain housing. We have multiple different programs that can help people buy housing and also support them in that journey and walk alongside them. Next slide. As I mentioned, we have a new division called the Disaster Recovery and Resiliency Division, and this is a new body of work that was created by the legislature for Oregon Housing and Community Services in the aftermath of the 2020 Labor Day wildfires. Next slide. Lastly is the Housing Stabilization Division. This division provides critical services to low-income Oregonians by working closely with a diverse set of local partners, culturally specific organizations, and local stakeholders. It provides essential services such as housing, utilities, and energy assistance. Next slide. So that was a giant overview of what OHCS does, because oftentimes I get asked, what do y'all even do? So that was my summary, but always ask questions. If you see me, just ask away and I'll try to get those answered for you. But I wanted to share some updates of the past 5 years of things that we've been able to accomplish. And I put in the bottom of the upcoming slides, Northeast Oregon numbers. They're estimates and not fully up to date, so I apologize if in the next coming weeks, as our research division publishes more data, you see bigger numbers there. So next slide. So 5 years ago, Oregon Housing had a statewide housing plan, and we made the following goals, and we've exceeded all but one, and we're almost there. And we're really excited about the progress, but we know that we're not the only ones doing the work. We're essentially walking along y'all as y'all do all the hard work. Next slide. So our homelessness goal, we wanted to drive toward impactful homelessness interventions. And so we had some big goals of rehousing people that have experienced homelessness. And in Northeast Oregon, we have rehoused 33 homes, or our goal is 33 homes in this specific area of the state. And so far, as of March 2024, we have rehomed 14 households. Next slide. Permanent supportive housing. So OHCS wanted to commit our support of our permanent supportive housing funding, and so we wanted to increase the opportunities of those housing slots all over the state, and we've met that goal. And in Northeast Oregon, we have 6 new units of permanent supportive housing, and I put a little picture of the building that contains those units. Next slide. Affordable rental housing. So we wanted to triple the existing pipeline of our affordable rental housing in this state, and that was a goal of 25,000 units. As of right now, we've more than tripled it. We're at 27,000 units of affordable rental housing. And then in northeastern Oregon, that looks like 18 properties and 924 units that have been funded in this area. Next slide. Homeownership. So another one of our goals was trying to assist 6,500 households to becoming successful homeowners. And in northeastern Oregon, we've helped 203 northeastern Oregonians purchase their home. And then next slide. OHCS wanted to double the number of our BIPOC homeowners in the state, and we've met that goal, but specifically in Northeast Oregon, 25 BIPOC households have been able to attain home ownership in the state. And then last but not least, rural housing. We wanted to increase our funded, we wanted to increase our funding in rural Oregon specifically, and we've met that goal. And for Northeastern Oregon, most of Northeastern Oregon would help. So I didn't want to repeat those numbers. And so why do these facts matter? What matters? Next slide. We are about to start our state budgeting process. OHCS is about to publish its agency request budget. Next slide. And then now is y'all's turn to get involved and advocate for what you need as community members to get the work you need done. So This is, in general, something the state does every 2 years. The agency will ask for what it can do and ask for the funding to do the job it thinks it can do. Then the governor's office takes that information and will create the governor's recommended budget, and then the legislature and then some of the legislators in the room will help decide what that actually looks like. So next slide. And so agency request budget, governor's budget, and then legislatively adopted budget. Why does that matter? Next slide. There is one more thing for budgets. As I said, OHCS will be going forward with our ARB soon. So we have a webinar on Tuesday. The QR code can help you register for that. But if also you miss that code, find me and I'll send you a link. We have big goals as the state agency because you as our partners have exceeded our expectations and have done amazing work for your community, and we need more funding to do, essentially to pass it on. And so we've created an agency request budget that hopefully can accomplish the goals we all have together. And so, next slide. I just briefly want to tell you how to help move forward in this process. Next slide. Sorry, I like title slides. Who is my legislator? Many of you, your legislator is in the room. Essentially, they're the ones who can help, after the governor comes out with her recommended budget, are the ones going to do the work and decide how much funding there is. So my big encouragement to you is look up who your legislator is, send them emails, ask questions. Also ask people in the room that are doing the work, what do you need? Because all of our brains together are how we make good policy. None of us in the room have the answers. And so I just wanted to put that information up there so that you can help bring housing to Oregon, because we can't do it alone.